My name is Jivan and I'm presenting my project that explores how Hellenistic trends influence Buddhist art and architecture. Art and architecture define a specific culture or community. Appreciating diverse cultures is important as we are always confronted with many challenges such as understanding our own identity and how we interact with one another. Hellenistic art is Greek art that was created after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. It has shaped Western culture. By analysing its impact on other cultures, it reveals how Hellenistic art has changed people's understanding of their own environment. I spent 2 weeks in the Asian department of the British Library, analysing the effect Hellenistic trends had on Buddhist art and beyond. I wandered through the British Museum, paying special attention to the Hellenistic human form and the narrative reliefs on Greek temples. In the Victoria and Albert Museum, I observed the importance of Buddhist symbolism. For example, the Ushnisha is the wisdom bump, the urna represents the third eye, and the elongated ears were exclusive for the Buddha. I also gained access to original artifacts in the Blythe House. A limitation to my research is that I could have compared how Indians documented the campaigns of Alexander the Great and Buddhist art in order to bring a deeper analysis. However, the project still encourages us to become aware of how Hellenistic trends have had a far-reaching impact throughout history. In 326 BC, Alexander the Great invaded India for its valuable silk route. This route was filled with many Buddhist sanctuaries. For 2 years, Alexander had settled in the area of Gandhara, which is modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan and Punjab. By forming an alliance with the governor Tuxiles, he aimed to defeat the Indian king Porus in the Battle of Jhelum. Unfortunately, he was defeated, yet he clearly entered India aiming to enhance the glory of the Greeks, and that legacy remained for decades within Buddhist art. The Buddhapada was a trend that majority of Buddhists followed from as early as the 18th century. Usually the Dharmachakra, the wheel of the law, is portrayed representing the Eightfold Path to Nirvana. The highly decorative lotuses enhance the motif of purity and creation. Ultimately, Buddhist art aimed to glorify the Buddha and the power of Nirvana. After Alexander's invasion, the trends began to change. One medium of identifying Hellenistic influence are offering trays. These were used for religious and practical purposes. The sea monster was a symbol of endurance when reaching Sukhavati, the land of bliss. This idea could be due to the exposure of the Greek god Poseidon, god of the sea, known for using his power to bring prosperity from chaos. Another theme was the legend of Hercules. He was known for his ability to use his strength to achieve immortal status. However, on this tray, Omphale is depicted. She was Hercules' mistress. This erotic scene may not have been fully understood since Buddhism discouraged human desire. However, this shows how Buddhists try to embrace the popular character Hercules. This offering tray depicts the wedding celebrations of Dionysus and Ariadne. Again, this is an unusual scene. However, it could be highlighting that earthly desires must be removed in order to find satisfaction in life, instead of temporary pleasures such as drinking and celebrations. 4th century Buddhist art began to return to the idea of iconography. However, the Buddha was no longer represented in the Buddhapada, but in human form. The Greeks' representation of heroes and the divine inspired the Greeks to transform their representation of the Buddha. Perfection was a characteristic exclusive for the Buddha. Thus, it seemed obvious to adopt the Hellenistic ideal human form and use it to represent the ideal human, the Buddha. The Bodhisattva Maitreya, made in 100 to 400 AD, was of the Kushan period, during the ruling of Kanishka I, a leader who was heavily inspired by the Greeks. Kanishka used Buddhism as a brand for his empire. He desired for Buddhist art to attract a wider audience. Thus, figures such as the Bodhisattvas were made more aesthetically pleasing than the simple Buddha. This method of developing a united empire through art was a method used by the Greeks. Their unique temples, dedication to the gods, and coinage were a few of many ways in which the Greeks portrayed their identity. As explored within the trays, Buddhist art continued to develop storytelling. These illustrations can be compared to Greek vases, as they usually portray the stories of the Greek heroes and the tales of the gods. In the mid-2nd century, the style of the figures within the reliefs changed dramatically. The drapery imitated the traditional Greek attire, peplos. This relief portrays the legend of the Buddha aiding the ferocious elephant Nilagiri to find peace within itself. As you can see, it seems odd for the elephant to be smaller than the Buddha. However, this method was used by the Greeks. Larger the size of the character meant that it was more significant. Alexander the Great's campaign in India was ill-fated, but it had the power to transform the material culture associated with Buddhism. The Buddhist core theme of using art to convey the greatness of the Buddha remained, yet his representation was inspired by the Hellenistic methods of glorifying their gods and themselves. Ultimately, this highlights how society learns to embrace different cultures by taking the successful and the most influential aspects and adapting them for their own philosophies. It proves that we are all learning and that we can benefit from others in order to live in the best environment. Thank you for listening to my presentation.